Hey guys, and welcome to another video on some of the most hilarious and absurd phonies the top Scrabble experts have ever let stay on the board. Our first example features none other than Josh Sokol, who was this year's Scrabble Players Champion, and in this game he's already down almost 80 points to another strong player, Yuri, and in this position, Yuri bingos with QUINALOL through this U in group. And QUINALOL is a rather absurd sounding word, and as it turns out, it is not a word at all. Which is definitely an LOL moment. Pretty ironic, given that QUINALOL ends in LOL. And all Josh can say is this was the greatest phony ever played on Joshua Sokol. And it actually got better here, as on the next turn, Josh would respond with Fellator on a triple-triple for 158 points, retaking the lead, or so it seems, because this is not a word, and Yuri would challenge it off the board. Fellator is only spelled with an OR at the end. And Yuri would then block this line, and Josh would go on to miss reflates as a bingo to the S in Anestri. Reflates would have played over here on the G column and maybe given Josh some chances to get back in the game, but instead he misses that, just plays Phi, and then Yuri would actually bingo again right here with Granules and take a huge lead and go on to win this game quite handily. So, pretty wild stuff. Josh lets QUINALOL go, plays the phony triple-triple, and then just gets absolutely crushed. Our next example once again features Josh Sokol, and in this position, his opponent Andre plays Korova, K-O-R-O-V-A, for 34 points. Now, you guys guessed it, Korova is not a word, and it doesn't even really resemble anything whatsoever that I know of that's valid in the Scrabble dictionary. Yet, as Josh notes in his comments here, he recognized it from somewhere so much that after Andre laid down the O, R, and second O, Josh was able to predict that before Andre even finished making his play, the last two tiles were going to be the V and the A for Korova. So if Josh recognized it so clearly, but it's not in the dictionary, then where did it come from? I looked it up, and it turns out that a Korovai, spelled K-O-R-O-V-A-I, is actually a real thing. It is a type of bread, a decorative bread traditionally used in Eastern European weddings. So it is a real thing, but it's still not valid in the Scrabble dictionary. And once again, even if it were, it would need an I at the end for K-O-R-O-V-A-I. So this play of Korova is a misspelling of a real thing, but that real thing is still not a valid word. So pretty wild stuff, but like I said, it got by Josh. Josh would, however, go on to still win this game. Our third and final example featuring Josh Sokol starts with Josh having a rack of D-E-E-E-I-P-R, and Josh starting off the game by trading a single E on his opening play. As he notes, this is not a particularly good play, as he doesn't bingo all that often on his next turn. However, it would set off this very comical sequence of events. His opponent, Wayne, opens with Wally for 30 points, and Josh redraws an E out of the bag after trading a single E. Instead of fishing again, Josh decides to play Ripe Weed for 78 points as a phony bingo. It's not the craziest phony, as there are plenty of strange-sounding words that end in weed that are valid, and it would indeed get by Wayne. Wayne would play Ba for 23, and Josh would respond with Feast, hooking an S on Ripe Weed to make Ripe Weeds for 54 points. Now, this is, of course, another phony. Ripe Weed not being a word means Ripe Weeds is also not going to be a word, so that is already the second phony of this game that has stayed on the board. However, as we'll see, it would not be the last. The next couple of turns both involve only valid plays. Wayne plays Feel for 21, Josh V for 27, but here, Wayne would exact some revenge for Josh's antics with Ripe Weed and Ripe Weeds by playing Canoers and Wallies, spelled W-A-L-L-Y-S. Now, Wally is a valid word, and it is a noun. It does pluralize, but the valid plural is W-A-L-L-I-E-S, not W-A-L-L-Y-S. So this rather absurd-looking play of Wallies stays on the board. Now, Josh does have a valid point in his comment here. There are some five-letter nouns ending in Y that do pluralize with an S at the end. The most similar example is probably Telly, T-E-L-L-Y, which is able to pluralize T-E-L-L-Y-S in addition to T-E-L-L-I-E-S. There are a few other examples, too, that Josh mentions here, such as Henry, Bendy, Bayali, Cody, Plady, and Zlati. However, Wally is very much not one of these examples and does not pluralize this way. However, it gets by Josh, and as a result, 3 out of the first 8 turns in this game resulted in phonies that stayed on the board. So, pretty crazy stuff. Josh would go on to win this game comfortably. We're now going to move on from Josh, but we'll be staying with Wayne for one more position, as here he's taking on Cesar del Solar, another top player. Wayne is completely lost in this position. He's down over 250 points in the endgame, but he does at least make a highlight by playing and getting away with the phony of Toths, Toths, for 29 points. Now, this is a pretty absurd-sounding phony 5, really a plural of a 4, which also isn't valid. Toth, T-O-T-H, is not a word either. And, yeah, I mean, there's really just nothing that resembles this. There's Teths, T-E-T-H-S, and Soths, S-O-T-H-S, but Toths, I mean, come on. This is just not a word, and Cesar is rightfully displeased with himself in his comment here for letting this stay on the board. Of course, it's not going to affect the outcome of the game. Cesar is still up well over 200 points and would continue and win this game quite easily, but he still cost himself a significant amount of spread by not challenging this off and depriving Wayne of his 29 points, and also the ability to rid himself of some of his high point tiles. So, could potentially be a costly mistake for Cesar if spread mattered, and definitely a bit sloppy, but certainly quite funny. We'll be staying with Cesar in our next example. Here he's playing another strong expert, Matt O'Connor, and Matt opens the game immediately with Wech, W-E-C-H, for 24 points. Now, Wech is not a word, and Cesar here, as you can see by his all-caps comment, is very upset with himself for letting this stay on the board. Yes, Wech. Yes, I let someone play Wech on me in Division 1 of Nationals after preparing for a whole year and plotting my path to victory. I started it so quizzically and didn't even say hold, instead thought, why would he not just play chew? Then suddenly it was my turn again. For the rest of the game, I was 100% sure Wech was a phony. So, pretty funny stuff, and gotta hand it to Cesar there for being self-deprecating and making a great and hilarious comment out of this. But yeah, of course, this is just an extremely sloppy and careless mistake by Cesar. It is true that Matthew could have played chew for the same score, which is, of course, a valid word, but he didn't, and Cesar is a strong enough player that he's got to know his fours and got to challenge this off. But he didn't, and thus Wech stayed on the board. Matthew would go on to win this game, so it turned out to be a costly mistake for Cesar. We have one more example featuring Cesar, and here he's playing another strong expert, Ed de Guzman, and Ed plays Tonight, T-O-N-I-T-E, to this E for 12 points. Now, tonight is, of course, a commonly used term. You see it a lot in as a shorthand in texts for tonight, which is spelled T-O-N-I-G-H-T. However, this is very much not an acceptable word in Scrabble. And Cesar would let it go, and again, as we see, Cesar not happy with himself. Keeping that on the board is one of the worst things I've ever done. Well, I don't know about that, Cesar. That's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but it is a pretty egregious phony. He definitely should have challenged it off. But yeah, I mean, in fairness, night, N-I-T-E, is a word. But tonight definitely is not. So, pretty funny stuff, but once again, it stays on the board, so that will wrap up our segment on Cesar del Solar, as we move on to a game featuring two other very strong players, Ken Rubin and Jared Capel. It's Jared's turn here, and he's in a pretty tough spot. He's down nearly 100 points, and he's got both the X and Y on his rack in a position where he's probably going to need to bingo ASAP if he wants to get back into this game. So he decides to get rid of these high point tiles by playing the word onyx for 31 points on the F column. And this looks like a solid play. However, the problem is Jared has formed the invalid two-letter word of XO as part of his play. Now, XO is a text sign-off, meaning hugs and kisses, but it is very much not valid in the Scrabble dictionary. And this somehow would get by Ken. Now, Ken, of course, knows his two-letter words down cold. He's a very experienced Scrabble expert who's been playing for years. The only explanation is that he simply, for some reason, didn't notice this until it was too late. And as it turns out, I actually talked to Ken about this position after, and Ken didn't even notice this after the game. He only noticed this when he was putting it into the computer program Quackle later on to analyze and annotate this game, which is pretty wild. But that just goes to show you, you never know what's going to happen, and you never know what might go unnoticed by even some of the most experienced and strongest players. Now, Ken would go on to still win this game quite comfortably, as he would draw into a bingo of obesity on his next turn, retaking a 100-plus point lead. However, it is still pretty funny that he let XO stay on a Scrabble board. Moving on, we have a game played between Ari Sinki and Sid Morali, both of whom are very strong experts. This game was actually played at a tournament I helped run recently in my home state of Kentucky. Now, in this position, Ari has a small lead, but he's got a bit of a clunky rack with a bunch of one-pointers, including duplicate O's and duplicate T's. However, he finds the bingo of platoon from this P for 83 points. Now, platoon is a fairly well-known term used to refer to a military unit, However, some of you may be looking at this play and shouting at the screen, wait a minute, but platoon only has one T. And for those of you saying that, you would be exactly correct. Ari has misspelled this word. However, the good news for Ari is that Sid also wasn't sure how to spell this word, and Sid did not challenge this phony bingo of platoon with two T's. Sid would respond with for 28 points, and as sort of a reward for his phony, Ari would actually draw both blanks and an S on his next 7-tile pull, and he would of course bingo again on his next turn, and he would go on to win this game pretty comfortably. So pretty crazy stuff, and that just goes to show you, even some of the best Scrabble experts sometimes forget how to spell fairly common words, so you just never know what's going to happen. Now, moving on to our next example, we once again have Ari Sinki, and here his opponent Tim makes a very nice play here, a bingo with 6 overlaps, not something you see every day. He plays the word trumper for 98 points, a fairly large score. And trumper is not a word. Of course, it is a well-known term, especially after the last couple of presidential elections, but it is not a word. It turns out that trumpery is a word, so this would take a Y as a backhook, but trumper alone is not a word. However, Ari was not aware that this wasn't a word and would accept the play, responding with culture for 18 points. So this was a fairly huge swing, as trumper wasn't only a bingo, it scored 98 points, which is quite a lot. So we went from potentially Ari challenging trumper off and having a commanding lead to now a basically even game. And it turns out that Ari would actually go on to win this game by a very narrow margin. He'd win by 4 points after a very complicated endgame. So not challenging trumper very, very nearly cost Ari the game. And a very nice phony and a very creative play by his opponent Tim in that position. We now move on to our final example featuring top player Joey Malik. And in this position, his opponent Derek plays Seth, S-E-T-H, for 25 points. And this might actually be my favorite example in this whole video, both because of the board and also Joey's comment. Joey says, Mr. Lipkin would not be proud at seeing this stay on a board. Now, for those of you in the Scrabble community, I'm sure you all know who Joey's referring to. Of course, it is none other than Seth Lipkin, who is a very highly valued member of the community, especially for his contribution in the form of developing the website crosstables.com, which I'm actually using right now. It contains the biggest database of annotated Scrabble games, and not only that, it shows tons of player statistics and upcoming tournaments and all kinds of stuff. I don't even know where Tournament Scrabble would be at if not for Cross Tables and if not for Seth. So huge shout out to Seth Lipkin. And I don't know if Seth has actually seen this yet, but Seth, if you're watching, let us know how you actually feel about Joey having let Seth stay on the board here. Are you not proud, as Joey said? Are you proud of him for letting it stay as a tribute to you? How do you feel about it? Let us know. I'd be very curious. I'm sure a lot of my viewers would be too. But in any case, pretty funny stuff. It turns out that Seth would actually not be pluralized. I was wondering when I first saw this if anyone would put an S on Seth to make Seths. It turns out nobody did. It stayed just as Seth for the rest of the game. And Joey would go on to hold on and win this game despite allowing Seth to stay on the board. So pretty funny stuff. But yeah, that's it for this example, and that's it for this video, guys. That's everything I have for today, but hope you enjoyed it and got a kick out of it. And yeah, like I said, just goes to show you, you never know. Even some of the best Scrabble players in the world let fairly absurd phonies go that you would never think would ever stay on a board at any level. So yeah, crazy stuff happens in this game, and it's always pretty fun to see. So once again, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be back soon with more fun examples. So that's it, guys. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate the support, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.